it's had a very tumultuous history, right from partition in 1947. Quick recap, from 47 to 71. They were the eastern wing of Pakistan, right? You had this bizarre geography of Pakistan on the west and Pakistan on the east of India, and separated by over 2,000 kilometers of Indian territory. And in East Pakistan, now what happened was that there was Bengali nationalism, which I think the military rulers of West Pakistan underestimated, and they tried to repress that. The Awami League is seen as secular, progressive, democratic. The BNP, which is General Ziaur Rahman's party, is seen as more closely aligned with the Jamaat, and they are seen as more fundamental.
The legacy of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. You have instances where his houses have been attacked, his statues have been toppled. His daughter is living in exile in India. The party he founded has been disbarred from being part of elections.
The 15 years that Sheikh Hasina has been in power in Bangladesh have been the best years for India-Bangladesh relations. And I'm here looking at it. I'm looking at Bangladesh from purely India perspective, right? Yeah. What was Bangladesh before Sheikh Hasina came to power, before her nearly 3 tenures back to back? It was a hub of Islamists. It was a hub of illegal activities, all directed at India.
India ever prepared for a contingency to see this sort of a turn in Bangladesh, that the anti-India sentiment that I was talking about? You explained very beautifully by saying that you never managed to take the Pakistan out of Bangladesh. Welcome to Inner Defense. Bangladesh is on the boil once again. For over a year now, Bangladesh has seen wild political uncertainty after the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was forced to flee the country and seek refuge in India. She fled in around August last year, if I'm getting the month correct, over massive youth protests that were launched over job quotas. Quotas meant for descendants of freedom fighters who'd fought for Bangladesh's independence. Since then, there is a lot of uncertainty in Bangladesh. There's been an interim government. There are hopes of an election being held very soon. However, the Awami League of Sheikh Hasina has been disbarred from the election. Now, up until now, or rather say up until a couple of months ago, this was mostly for India, sort of a regime change situation in Bangladesh. But what's happened in the last few weeks has almost become a hostile neighborhood sort of a situation, which is exactly why I want to discuss this with Sandeep on this episode of Inner Defense. Hey Sandeep, how are you?
Hey, good Dev, good to be back.
So Sandeep, I think this is perhaps the right way to put it. It was mostly regime change last year.
Yeah.
And over the period of several months now, it's become very hostile neighborhood. Just before the recording, we were talking about this chatter that's there online of a defense pact that Pakistan and Bangladesh may sign. Something on the lines of the Saudi pact that Pakistan signed a couple of months ago that we had an episode on, which would basically be on the lines of Pakistan sort of coming to the aid of Bangladesh if Bangladesh ever attacked, and the other way around. Obviously, that's going to be the point of interest for us as we discuss the situation in Bangladesh. But before we do, we'll obviously sort of get some recap of the history. Because I think to understand the two core parties at play, Awami League versus the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, you have to sort of go back to the two men, the founder and the general, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and Ziaur Rahman. Both of them assassinated in coup attempts. So, Sandeep, tell us about these two people, these two men. What has flown from them in terms of the Awami League under Mujibur Rahman and the BNP under Ziaur Rahman, their respective descendants, Sheikh Hasina and Khalida Zia. So tell us, after independence, what happened with these two men, the sort of ideologies that diverged, and where they placed the Awami League and BNP today, before we talk about the events of the last year.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fascinating story. I mean, it's the subject of an OTT series, if you ask me. I mean, because this is like, this is a script that's writing itself. In Bangladesh, if you look at it, it's had a very tumultuous history, right from partition in 1947. Quick recap, from 47 to 71. They were the eastern wing of Pakistan, right? You had this bizarre geography of Pakistan on the west and Pakistan on the east of India, and separated by over 2,000 kilometers of Indian territory. And in East Pakistan. Now, what happened was that there was Bengali nationalism, which I think the military rulers of West Pakistan underestimated, and they tried to repress that. The Awami League was the secular fount of politics in then East Pakistan. They won the elections in a landslide election that were conducted in 1970, but the Pakistan military rulers did not want to give the Awami League power, because that would mean that for the first time you would have a Pakistani prime minister from Bengal, right, from the east part, which they always looked upon as a colony. I mean, if you look at the whole mindset of Pakistan, it's 4 provinces in the west and 1 in the east. So the 4 provinces, primarily the Punjabi-dominated ones, looked down upon Bengali culture, Bengali nationalism, all of those things. And the result was that in 1971, you had a genocide. India stepped in, aided the creation of Bangladesh. Now, there are 2 strands here in Bangladesh. There is a civil side, which is Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, who is the founder of the Awami League. He's regarded as the father of modern Bangladesh. And there is the military side, which is then Major Ziaur Rahman, who then becomes general, who actually issues the declaration of the independence of Bangladesh in March of 1971. And these 2 strands somehow coexist from 1971 after the liberation till about 1975, when there is this mysterious assassination of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, where you have these military officers young captains and majors who come rushing into 32 Dhanmondi, and where the Sheikh Mujibur Rahman family lives, where Sheikh Mujib's family lives. And they proceed to carry out one of the most horrific massacres in political history, where they go literally from room to room. They kill all his family members, his servants, his friends, whoever's in that 32 Dhanmondi is massacred. And I've been to 32 Dhanmondi when it was still standing about nearly a decade ago. I was researching for my book, and one of the freedom fighters, he took me around and he showed me, look, this is what happened. They went from this room to that room and they murdered everyone. And I was thinking, where did this violent strand, this violent streak come from, where you murder the man who's given you freedom and his whole family, right down to his 14-year-old son, Sheikh Russell. He's the youngest person to be killed there. And the only 2 people who escape are Sheikh Hasina and Sheikh Rehana, who are his 2 youngest children. They are overseas. They are in Europe at the time when this massacre happens in August of 1975. That's the only reason that they survived. And there are certain events that, go into play. And lo and behold, the beneficiary of those events is General Ziaur Rahman. And he takes over power in 1975. And he launches the BNP, the Bangladesh National Party, in 1978. And in 1981, General Ziaur Rahman is assassinated in pretty much the same circumstances that Sheikh Mujibur Rahman is murdered, where you have young officers. I mean, this is again in Chittagong. He's there spending an evening there because he wants to solve some political issues. And early in the morning, he's sleeping in this bungalow there. That's the military inspection bungalow kind of thing, where and suddenly that place is swarming with young officers, very angry at supposed favoritism that's going on there. And they attack this thing. And the interesting thing is there are no JCOs, there are no NCOs, no soldiers. They're all young officers. And these are all Mukti Jodhas. They're all been freedom fighters in the 71 war. And they come there, and one of them just picks up a Chinese submachine gun and just sprays the General Ziaur Rahman with something like an entire magazine, and he just collapses there. So 2 leaders, political and military, of the freedom struggle, they die within like 6 years of each other. And what happens is that the Awami League now is in the hands of Sheikh Hasina, his daughter, Bangabandhu's daughter. And in 1981, you have Khaleda Zia, who's the widow of General Ziaur Rahman, who takes over the BNP. So the politics of Bangladesh, except for a brief spell when Ershad, and this is interesting that Ershad is the one who takes the benefit of the assassination of Ziaur Rahman in 1981. He's a very quiet, wily, canning fellow who kind of takes power, and he rules Bangladesh for more than a decade. And then the Begums come together, as they call them. The two Begums come together, and they give him some kind of they put up a united front. And Ershad is out of the picture by the late 80s. He's gone. And very interestingly, he's one of the very few leaders who actually has a very peaceful, a dictator who retires peacefully. He starts his own political party and then dies at the ripe old age of 80, 90 or something in 2019. And this thing between the two Begums continues. So you have these two ladies who are who are taking forward the legacy of two of their founding fathers of Bangladesh. So, I mean, that in a nutshell is literally what the fight is all about. The Awami League is seen as secular, progressive, democratic. The BNP, which is General Ziaur Rahman's party, is seen as more closely aligned with the Jamaat. And they are seen as more fundamentalist. But though in recent years, they've kind of tried to break away from the Jamaat wants an identity of its own. And so here we are in 2026, we're looking at elections where, as you mentioned, the Awami League is out of the picture. They're not going to be, they're going to be disbarred from the elections. But the BNP and Tariq Rahman is the person to watch out for.
Yeah.
I mean, he's to arrive in Dhaka on the 25th of December as a Christmas Day gift for Bangladesh after 17 years in exile. So he's clearly the man to watch out for, and he's being tipped to be the person who could be the Prime Minister of Bangladesh in 2026.
Yeah, right. So let's look at what's happened in the last 1 year. In early last year, around June, July, summer, you basically had the court over there restoring job quotas for freedom fighters' descendants. That basically is what triggered massive youth protest against Sheikh Hasina's government. I'm sorry. The protest turned violent. She made some comments. There were allegations of that she carried out human rights abuses and stuff like that. And around August is when she fled. I remember sitting in the newsroom, and there was this C-17 Globemaster, if I'm not wrong. That was, or was it some other? C-130. Sorry, C-130.
So she flew into Mi-17 and then into a C-130.
And that was the most tracked plane on flight radar that day.
But I have to tell you something very strange. I was talking to a friend, and we were talking about contingencies. So he said, look, I need to drop some contingencies. This is a couple of years back. I think it was 2-3 years back. So he says, give me some ideas that you can, contingencies. So I said, well, one contingency is that what happens if, and this is when Sheikh Hasina was in power, what happens if Sheikh Hasina is deposed by the military or Islamists? How will you rescue her? Because I said she is so valuable for India. I mean, the kind of stuff she's done for India in 15 years. These have been the best years of India-Bangladesh relations. So I said, how are you going to fly in IAF C-130Js with para-SF guys to rescue Sheikh Hasina, and this is exactly what happened. As you said, a few years later, because Bangladesh is a very volatile, unpredictable politics. It's not like us, and we keep saying this every time, Dev, and there is a certain process in Indian politics. There is a certain element of predictability in our politics, right? You have a prime minister who's elected, and then he has to sweat before the next election and then get his mandate, renew his mandate, or be prepared to sit in the opposition. There's a very gradual process that we've kind of got used to now. Apart from the emergency in 75, we haven't seen any great disruptions like that. Every Indian prime minister who's come with a big mandate has either seen his mandate go, reduce, or been voted out of power, or have to struggle to get the next, to renew his mandate. Whereas in Pakistan and now in Bangladesh, you're seeing this kind of unpredictability where, the battle lines are so clearly drawn, and the enmity is like, they're like blood feuds. There's no easy, politics over there. It's all about killing the other person or exiling them or imprisoning them. That kind of very extreme kind of politics, which we fortunately have not seen or we haven't seen in a while.
Good point about the contingency bit, because I think now that explains what happened last year. Because when she flew into the Hindon Air Base close to Delhi, the national capital, and she stayed there for a few days, it was turned into a very high security zone. The speculation always was that this was just a temporary arrangement.
Yeah.
She was probably going to fly out to, let's say, the UK or some other country. That's what a lot of people assumed.
Yeah.
But then it turns out that she's still here. She's
Yeah.
living in, as the print reported a few months ago, she's living in a bungalow in the Lutyens,
Bungalow,
heart of
yeah.
Delhi, and she apparently takes walks at the famous garden whose name I'm forgetting right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very popular. I forget the name.
Gardens.
Yeah, the Lodi Gardens. Yes. All right. Anyway, so that's what happened last year. Then you had Muhammad Yunus, who came in with this interim government.
Yeah.
That government was supposed to sort of restore peace to the immediate situation, and eventually lead to a point where elections would be held. Before then, the Awami League was declared as illegal, and they were disbarred from the election. So up until now, like I said at the start of my start of the episode, this was a more or less a regime change situation for India. Some amounts of violence.
By regime change, Dev, I'm assuming you mean that external forces brought about a change in regime, and it wasn't the spontaneous student protests that we think them to be. Right? It was deliberate action from outside.
Yeah, and that is also something that we're going to come to in a bit. Now, what's happened in the latest flashpoint is there's this anti-India leader, pretty rabid, called Sharif Osman Hadi, who has been killed. This happened a few days ago, and it's the trigger point for our discussion as well. Now, the question, Sandeep, to my mind is this sort of anti-India sentiment that you are seeing in Bangladesh right now. The founder sentiment. I don't know if I don't know if this is where I want you to come in, whether these two strands go together, that there is a sentiment against the man who founded your country, and also the country that's been a very good friend of yours, the country that helped in your liberation struggle. So where are these two anti-sentiments coming from? Do they go hand in hand?
So good question, Dev. Now, the thing is that, and here I have to quote my friend General Ravi Shankar, who's because the point that he made about Bangladesh is very interesting. A couple of months back, we were talking, where he says that, what happened in 1971 is that India took Bangladesh out of Pakistan, but they didn't take the Pakistan out of Bangladesh. Right? So, when you go deeper into the politics of 1971 and the run-up to the liberation of Bangladesh, you realize that there was a very sizable population within Bangladesh that were entirely pro-Pakistan. They were actually what Jamaat comes from. And then you understand how the ruling military junta in East Pakistan was able to recruit Razakars. They, the Al-Badr and those kind of Razakars, who are basically militias, which they use then to hunt down Awami leaguers, intellectuals, students, all of those kind of things, right? And minorities, of course. Now, these people have kind of been there in the population, and they lie low. So what happens is that when I was there, I was told this thing that, this guy, just be careful, don't mingle too much, don't speak too much to him, because he's BNP and they're just waiting to come back, and they hadn't been back in power in about 15 years. But there's that radical strand which is not BNP. The BNP is not as radical as the Jamaat. Now, the BNP is actually a political party. They're committed to the democratic process. They believe in elections and all of that. The Jamaat is not. The Jamaat's end state is for Sharia to be imposed in Bangladesh. Right, and they believe in the concept of the caliphate and all of that. Right, they are a far-right Islamist party, and that's their agenda. Now, what has happened is that this violent, virulent, right-wing Islamist strand has always been there in East Pakistan. And let's not forget that you've had some horrific riots at partition, pre-partition, 1946. You've had massacres, you've had the direct action day and all of that. So there's been a very violent Islamist strand within the freedom movement of Pakistan as well, in Bengal. And that has always been below the surface. The Awami League is the moderate, secular, progressive part. And we've always, for obvious reasons, sided with the Awami League. And I must tell you this, Dev, that, in the 15 years that Sheikh Hasina has been in power in Bangladesh have been the best years for India-Bangladesh relations. And I'm here looking at it, I'm looking at Bangladesh from purely India perspective, right?
Yeah.
What was Bangladesh before Sheikh Hasina came to power, before her nearly 10 years back to back? It was a hub of Islamists. It was a hub of illegal activities, all directed at India. And if you go back into time, 1971, what is one of the biggest reasons that RN Cow wanted to go into East Pakistan, to liberate East Pakistan, to break it away from the West? It was that the fact that the ISI, they've had their bases in East Pakistan from the 1950s, not the 60s or the 70s. Right from the 1950s, the Chittagong Hill Tracts, in fact, were used as a springboard for insurgencies across northeastern India, whether it is the Manipur insurgency, the Naga insurgency, the Mizo insurgency. All the training camps were in the Chittagong Hill Tracts. And this is why late 60s, RN Cow says we need to break Bangladesh away from Pakistan, because it's going to be a sore, it's going to be a thorn in our backside otherwise, forever, in our backyard, backside, whatever you want to call it. And that's one of the motivating factors for the breakaway of, creation of Bangladesh. Why Cow wanted a free Bangladesh. And of course, he's sent in his covert units, the SFF and all were infiltrated into the Chittagong Hill Tracts to, basically knock out those Pakistan military camps over there. So when you have cut to nearly half a century later, under Sheikh Hasina, you have a Bangladesh that is very responsive to India's security needs. We are very acutely aware of the Northeast, the problems that we have, the insurgencies. You have China to the north. You have a hostile China to the north, in fact. And now what you have in 2025 and spilling over into 2026 is a hostile Bangladesh as well, right? So that thing of a chicken's neck, the dilemma, of course, I'm sure we will talk about it in a bit, is a very real problem. And that this is what happens when you have a country that's hostile to your interests, kind of going back to what it was pre-1971.
That's a fantastic point you made, Sandeep, because many people, and I'm one of them, see it very simplistically, that when the 71 war happened, the liberation happened, it was a clean break, and suddenly Bangladesh had nothing to do with Pakistan or its society altogether. But what you say makes so much sense, that you haven't taken that strand out.
That's right.
Right. Fantastic point. Right. So, Sandeep, before we talk about the defense dilemma that this gives us, one last point about what's going on in Bangladesh in terms of who's also influencing it. Last episode, we talked a bit about how spy agencies function, and we spoke about how one of their covert responsibilities in a foreign country is sort of to influence policies there, influence outcomes there, influence the situation there, basically in the favor of the country for which you work for. So, which are the countries that are very immensely interested in Bangladesh and would be and have been pulling the strings to sort of influence what's been going on over there?
That's three. There's a triangle of countries over there. There's the United States, there's China, and of course there's Pakistan. Now, Pakistan is the overt actor. China and the United States are more in the background, but they have their interests there, right? So the United States, what it's looking at is this grand containment strategy of China. They want to, get all these countries on the southern flanks of China in their camp, which is why they want Afghanistan, of course, Pakistan. You're looking at Bangladesh as well, and Myanmar. So these are all the areas from where they could launch, attacks against China's backdoor. Now, if you look at where Bangladesh is situated, it sits astride a very important energy lifeline for China, that is through the Bay of Bengal. China is aware of its Malacca dilemma, which is a majority of its energy flows through the Malacca Straits, which is why they've been trying to build these alternate pipelines to diversify their energy supplies. That is, one is through Myanmar and the Bay of Bengal, and the other one is to the Russian Federation. The Russian one will take, of course, some time to come, but in the meantime, you have these other pipelines. So the United States is very keen on sitting over there. They don't have a base there. They don't have a presence there. And that's why this thing of the St. Martin's Island came up when The US is believed to have asked Sheikh Hasina for a base there in the Bay of Bengal where they could kind of watch all of these activities, keep a watch on China, keep a watch on Bangladesh as well. And now, from what one hears, the US presence, the military presence in Bangladesh has gone up considerably. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of US troops. Hundreds, definitely. There are hundreds of US soldiers there for various exercises. And there was one of the special forces guys turned up dead in one hotel. And, those kind of things have been happening there, which we didn't see in the last couple of years. So, these are factors that worry India, that to have other countries coming into a country which you see as very vital, very critical to your security interests. And of course, the third factor is China itself. China has had very close ties with Bangladesh. In fact, these were built up by Ziaur Rahman, where he pivoted almost entirely towards China. And so China is also very interested in what's going on in Bangladesh. And you've seen that in the last couple of years. Of course, the big China Bangladesh to China pivot began during General Ziaur Rahman's time, when literally 90% of their military arsenal is of Chinese origin. And China has built a submarine base, one of the largest submarine bases in the Indian subcontinent at Cox's Bazar. It's a very large base, and they've sold them 2 submarines, second-hand submarines, but eventually there could be a larger fleet there. And the worry is that, of course, you could have Chinese submarines based there at some point in the future. So these are all, competing interests. China, Pakistan, the United States, all of them very interested in Bangladesh, and of course its location at the Bay of Bengal, and so close to India. And for Pakistan, it's very, it's very, very obvious why they would want it. And here there's that line of one of the Pakistani generals. In fact, this was their military strategy prior to 1971, when Bangladeshi politicians, then East Pakistan politicians, would ask, why are you so thinly defended in East Pakistan? They never deployed very large formations, military formations. And the guys in Islamabad and Rawalpindi would say, well, that's because the defense of East Pakistan lies in the West. So, we are going to draw away so many Indian troops that they will not have enough to attack East Pakistan with. And, more than 50 years later, it's like we're going back to those days where you have these very ambitious Pakistani generals, Field Marshal Munir for sure, who believes that if he, does this security agreement with Bangladesh, that will give India cause to worry. And therefore, it's a reimagining of that old, defense of Pakistan, West Pakistan lies in the East. That kind of scenario.
Yeah. Right. We'll talk more about this just after a quick break.
Why is it an unfinished revolution?
Because the revolution had an aim. I mean, that is not just the ouster of the Sheikh Hasina regime, but also bringing back restoring. The unstated aim was initially restoring law and order and doing away with corruption and misgovernance and all that. Now, nothing of that is there. Now, the whole thing has, swiveled on to what was the original plan of the people behind the scenes, the masters who were, the students were merely puppets. The puppeteers always wanted the Jamaat to come to power in order to needle India and pose as a security threat to.
So who are the puppeteers? Are you, in your book, making the point that this isn't a spontaneous students' movement? This is actually an orchestrated regime change operation?
Absolutely. Because, how the idea of the book, in fact, was started, like the genesis was, why did it happen suddenly? This started off as something to do with quotas, anti-discrimination and all. So, and the government had nothing. The government said that we are with the students, we are with the protesters, and we will concede their demands eventually. Then it became a remove Sheikh Hasina. It talked about toppling the government, etc. Why did it suddenly happen? And while we were investigating, talking to a lot of people across the board, talking to both Awami League, the army, the security establishment, and the other parties, we realized that it was a regime change operation, absolutely. one is the deep state America, and there's no doubt that the deep state is involved. The US deep state is involved in that.
Welcome back. So Sandeep, with Bangladesh now, we've always talked about a two-front situation for India,
Yeah.
China and Pakistan. Always, and this is always, lulled this sort of complacency, perhaps, that none of your other neighbors, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh,
Right.
Sri Lanka, are too much to worry about. But do you foresee a third front situation forming around the way next to India and Bangladesh? Not as much as Bangladesh being a military threat to you in terms of Bangladesh attacking you or invading you,
Right.
but providing that staging ground for your enemies to use that area to trouble you.
Absolutely. This is the very real fear that I have, and this agreement between Pakistan and Bangladesh only, illuminates that fear. And I think a lot of people would be thinking this through. Why the Pakistani military chose to do this agreement under Mohammad Yunus, which is not a legitimate. He cannot
government,
sign agreements of this nature. These are very, very big strategic agreements. You can't sign them when you don't have a lawfully elected government in place. And I think the first thing that India should do is, when a lawfully elected government does assume office next year, should ask for the scrapping of this kind of a deal, because the consequences of that, the implications of that are enormous. I'll just give you a couple of scenarios, since I love scenarios so much. What if the Pakistan military starts basing in Bangladesh, right? That could be, if not an entire third front, but it could be a half front. So you're looking at a 2.5 front situation, because I don't think Bangladesh has the kind of potential to create an entirely new front. You're looking at two big adversaries, China, of course, and Pakistan, which is the 5th largest army in the world. Bangladesh would not be very much, but it would, if you deployed Pakistani troops there, it would give you enough cause for concern for you to deploy some forces in the east to forestall any such, what if a division, Pakistan deploys a division there. These are contingencies that you must think through. And you must also make the Bangladeshis aware of this, that you do something like this, you allow the basing of Pakistani troops or assets or missiles or anything of that sort on your soil, then you become party to a conflict, right? And you can be sure that the BrahMos missiles will not be flying west. They would be going east as well, right? And that's something that we should call out very, very unequivocal. We should call out very unequivocally with Bangladesh. These are red lines. You cannot cross these red lines because they directly impact our security in the Northeast.
Yeah. There's also the point about that you made earlier, that have you prepared for the contingency of Sheikh Hasina being sort of deposed either by the military or by the Islamists? I think you were talking mostly about the immediate situation contingency in terms of the logistics of getting across a plane, some special forces guys to sort of bring her to Delhi.
It's a tactical.
However, my question now is, has India ever prepared for a contingency to see this sort of a turn in Bangladesh, that the anti-India sentiment that I was talking about? You explained very beautifully by saying that you never managed to take the Pakistan out of Bangladesh. Has the Indian establishment been aware of this fact, and have they been preparing for a situation like this?
Well, I'm sure they have. There are plans, and they've been discussed, hinted at in the past as well, where we were prepared to militarily intervene at some point, they say, in the 2010s in Bangladesh. And I'm sure that those plans exist. If the situation were to go beyond a point where India felt that its interests were threatened, you would have to intervene militarily. But I don't see anything happening in Bangladesh now. I must qualify this by saying that I do not see, as terrible as India-Bangladesh relations are in 2025, I do not see any room for Indian military intervention in Bangladesh. And that would be a terrible thing for us to do, right? You intervene in Bangladesh militarily, you get drawn into another military quagmire where that's not our focus as of now. Our entire focus should be on policing the border, just making sure that the 4,096 kilometer long India-Bangladesh boundary is secure. There's no infiltration to and fro, and you just keep Bangladesh corralled in that fence area, and not try and do a military intervention. But these are like knee-jerk reactions. They look very good tactically, like Indian forces do this, that, and all that. But what's the end state? What's the end game? So those things have to be thought through very carefully. Unless, of course, there is something that happens which is of grave critical threat to India. For instance, if there are troop movements out of Bangladesh into India, or moving towards the chicken's neck, or something of that sort happens, they get militarily emboldened. If Waqaruzzaman, I mean, this is something that I'm very mindful of. The fact is that you have a military chief who's very sensible, General Waqaruzzaman, who's he is not a hothead. Now, what if there were to be a coup in the Bangladesh army, for instance? And we've seen that in the past.
Yeah.
What if he's deposed? What if you get someone like Asim Munir over there, right? Who's a raging religious bigot, and he plans to launch an attack on India, or, sever the chicken's neck, and all of these things. India is this very convenient punching bag for all of these countries. They think that we spend a lot of time obsessing over Bangladesh and what we must do. We've got other things to do, But for them, one of my friends used to say that, I can understand their predicament. They're surrounded by India on all sides, right? So it's 4,000 kilometers of... They only have two neighbors, Bangladesh. They have India and they have Myanmar. And Myanmar, the border is just about 200 kilometers plus. It's a small border. And they're surrounded by us. And therefore, they have this thing of the big brother syndrome that, India is, against us and it's conspiring and wants to break us up. And no, I think we have nothing but the best intentions for Bangladesh. We only want Bangladesh to be stable, peaceful, progressive, and not be a base for anti-India forces of the kind that you're seeing now under Yunus. I mean, this is really tragic. And then this actually kind of justifies what we were doing with Sheikh Hasina over the last 15 years, encouraging her. We had excellent relations with her. The only thing was we could not settle the Teesta River dispute. Because we could have done it, but for a certain Indian chief minister in a certain Indian state just across the boundary. But there's another big thing that's going to come up, Dev, in 2026, which is the Ganga water sharing agreement, which we have with Bangladesh. That could possibly be an issue in 2026. It's set for a renewal next year. There've been a lot of murmurs on both sides, but I don't see that as a major issue unless some political party takes it up and makes it into another thing, that they're taking our water away or something like you see in Pakistan.
Great. As we end this discussion, since you love scenarios so much, I want to go back to the assassinations that we began this episode with, and sort of get an understanding from you on what exactly went down. Not on the day of the assassinations, but you said that they were, in both cases, they were young officers from the military. But for both those assassinations, what could have been those reasons that it happened? Was it like a planned conspiracy, or was it just like in the moment sort of a thing with them?
I think it's, I mean, this is not to label an entire community or something, but as people say, Bengalis are very emotional and they're militarized. So there are these, particular stereotypes. Bengalis are not a violent or martial, non-martial. They're a non-martial race and all of that. And yet you have this strand of very extreme violence in Bangladesh, East Pakistan before that, and also in West Bengal to a certain extent. You have a lot of political violence. And interestingly, in Bangladesh also, pre the creation of Bangladesh, you've seen a very violent counter-attack by Bangladeshis against the Pakistanis and the thing. And if you read Pakistani accounts, they say we had to do Operation Searchlight because they started killing our officers and our families and stuff like that. And, there was this wholesale thing. And this is to bring control. Of course, the kind of violence that they inflicted on East Pakistan, then East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, is unimaginable. But what happened after that is that you had a situation where whenever there are wars and insurgencies, a whole lot of weapons floating around, and you have hot-headed officers who believe that they can change the course of history, right? Which is what happened in 75, where a section of the Bangladesh army felt that who's Sheikh Mujibur Rahman? We are the guys who fought the war. We are the Mukti Bahini. We liberated the country. And this guy is now consolidating power, and he's become a dictator. He's become a civilian dictator. So it's time we, took matters into our own hands. And 6 years later, that same thing happens once again. You have another group of young officers who thinks the same way, and they topple Ziaur Rahman. And it ends not in a toppling; it ends in a automatic weapons fire. And there is at one end there is Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and the other you have Ziaur Rahman. So this violent strand has continued through Bangladeshi politics, and you saw that in the mobs that were advancing toward Sheikh Hasina's official residence. Those were not peaceful protesters, right? Of the kind that you've seen in other. They were there to literally kill, Sheikh Hasina and assassinate members of a family. They're a very violent kind of mob. And that is why they had to, fly her out. Literally, the Bangladesh army literally moved in and saved her. So there's this conspiracy theory saying that, oh no, the military was also part of this conspiracy, and they, got her out of the scene, and so that there could be the regime change, as they say, right? But the fact is that it's very violent. It remains very violent, very emotional. I mean, if you see the kind of crowds and that lynching of that poor factory worker. These are not
Deepu Das.
Deepu Das's lynching. These are not situations that happen in normal countries, right? They're going through a lot, and one just hopes that the elections are conducted in about 2 months' time. You have a legitimately, democratically elected government in power, irrespective of who comes to power. Most likely, it seems that it is going to be the BNP. The Jamaat will also get a sizable majority. But the other scenario that's being spoken about is that Muhammad Yunus will not ride away quietly into the sunset. And he stays there as some kind of president or senior statesman kind of figure with a very large, he kind of divides power between the president and the prime minister. They don't want a super powerful prime minister who can then, oppress other political parties, become a dictator, a civilian dictator. So therefore, there is this talk of power being shared between the president and the prime minister, and even the creation of an upper house. So it's a unicameral legislature that they have. The Jatiya Sangsad is just one thing. They will create an upper house as well. So you'll have a Rajya Sabha equivalent, which will then elect the president. So all of these scenarios are being spoken about, but you must remember that whoever has planned this regime change and who's got all of these chess pieces on the board has some end state in mind for Bangladesh. And you have to see the kind of statements that came out of the Europeans when that student leader was shot. Nondescript guy, Hadi, when he was shot. And you had Europeans coming out there and, saying that, oh, we condemn this. And not a word of regret for that poor factory worker who's lynched publicly, burnt alive, and all of that. So then one wonders whether there are other forces at play, whether it's more than just those three countries that that we talked about, right? There are many other players hidden, in the shadows. But the fact is that Bangladesh is a country that at some point. Where people said, Pakistanis were saying that, Bangladesh today is doing so well. They're growing at 6%. They were at some point, 6 or 7%. And today they're back to about 2 or 3%, right? They said that, Bangladesh is the Pakistan that Muhammad Ali Jinnah dreamt of, right? They're doing so well for themselves. And today, I think they've decided that we don't want economic growth. We don't want development. We don't want all of this. We want to be like Pakistan, Basket case.
Fantastic point. One last brief point to end the episode on. What is the future of the legacy of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman? You have instances where his houses have been attacked, his statues have been toppled. His daughter is living in exile in India. The party he founded has been disbarred from conducting from being part of elections. What about his legacy?
His legacy continues, Dev, and the fact that his adversaries are trying so hard to erase his legacy suggests that they are really afraid of that legacy of his. And he's the larger-than-life person, right? I never met him. I mean, of course, I was very small when he passed away, but my co-author, Captain M.N.R. Samant, worked very closely with him, and he's good things to say about him. And he's a very captivating personality, right? And the legacy that he's left, he's literally the father of Bangladesh, a man who, as we discussed on a previous episode, how Imran Khan is, the way he had the gumption to stand up to the military is exactly what Bangabandhu did. I mean, he stood up to the Pakistani military, and they were as vicious with him as they were with the other civilians, including Zede Bhutto. It's a miracle he managed to stay alive. And his legacy is not going anywhere. It will remain in Bangladesh. It might be below the radar right now for obvious reasons, because you have lynch mobs running around, being encouraged by various external forces and some internal ones. But that legacy remains, and it will continue. And the Awami League is a manifestation of that very sizable percentage of Bangladeshi population who want peace, progress, democracy, a secular democracy which is not about religious fundamentalism. They want to grow, and they want a stable, peaceful Bangladesh, which we saw for 15 years. It was, at some point, it was growing faster than India even, right? And their human development indices were better than ours in a couple of respects. But as we realize now, it was all built on a foundation of sand. And I mean, today they are where they are, and one only hopes that in 2026, they choose wisely and they come out of this mess that they're in. Because we have a shared destiny. We can't choose our neighbors. Just so happens that they are in our neighborhood, and we wish them well. We want them to come out of this and become a normal, stable, prosperous country. So we don't have to keep looking over our shoulders that which terrorist organization has set up a camp over there, or which ISI chief is visiting over there, and what plans do they have for stoking instability in our northeast, and those kind of things.
Right. Great. I think we'll end it there. Like you said at the beginning of this episode, this is like an OTT series that's still writing itself because we don't know yet what will happen. We don't know the identities of those external players who are playing with those chess pieces. So I think this is something that will happen in the near future, perhaps. Great, Sandeep. Thanks. Fantastic discussion. As always, great insights from you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Dev.
And thanks as always to our listeners and viewers. That's it for this week's Defense Dose. For more, tune in next week. Till then, stay safe and do not cross any boundaries without a passport. Bye-bye.